Uh, Paul, our painter today is Paul Schulenburg, and I've tried not to every month in every one of the 10 years that I've done this, if I could have Paul Schulenburg do a demo, there's something more you could learn. But you can't do that. It would be in a position on him and then probably on everybody else. But still, we couldn't have somebody who could communicate a message of how to paint people or the Cape Cod life down here, the fishermen or the dunes, as well as Paul. You want to see some of his work? You can look in some of the uh, American art collectors, and he's been on the cover of those. He's been in the Cape Cod Life a number of times. Google his name. That's how I met him, to find all of the things that Paul does and his history of who he is. He's affiliated with the Addison Gallery, also in New York, the Billis Gallery, and they have a studio, or they have a gallery in California, Los Angeles, and in Westport, Connecticut. He runs Monday night and Wednesday night. Now it's online, I guess. Um, Painting sessions. The Monday night painters, the Wednesday night painters. I've been lucky enough to be invited there several times long ago and paint with his people, and it's a wonderful experience. And I'm hoping that all of you will, who are new to watching Paul paint and listen to how he does what he does, will benefit the way I have and others have who are watching in again. So without further ado, Paul, if I have missed something, I'll let you fill people in on what you'd like them to know about you. Here's Paul Schulenburg to provide a demo of that's going to make us all better painters. It's yours.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you, Michael. That was a wonderful introduction, and glad to see so many people here. So I'm at my studio, and I'm going to show you a few slides to get started to let you know a little bit more about me. I'm originally from upstate New York, and we used to vacation on Cape Cod. So that's how I wound up here. I fell in love with Cape Cod when I was 5 or 6 years old, and decided to move here when I could. Right now I live in Eastham, and I went to BU. I studied painting, fine art painting. I had no idea how I was going to make a living, but I just thought I would do it and probably become a teacher, because that's what artists do. And I never got a teaching degree. I never got that far. I wound up doing commercial art, doing paste up and that kind of thing, which led me to illustration. So let me show you my slideshow. After doing paste up and making a meager living, I started doing illustration, and that kind of worked out for a while. Late 80s and through the 90s. So can you all see that? So I did concept illustration. When I say what is an illustrator, people will say, "Oh, I can see that in your paintings," because I paint sort of realistically. So people think I do like Norman Rockwell style illustration, which is not true. I did like concept based or illustration like this. So this was probably for an article. It may have been about families, people working together. I don't really know. Solving problems. It looks like being led primarily by women. So it might have been like something about women heading families. I don't really remember. This illustration, a lot of my illustrations went to a stock house in New York, and so this was sold at some point to, this is the League of Women's Voters. They liked the image, and they used it for a brochure. This is 1992, 93. So that's what I was doing back then. This was probably for a magazine, little illustration. I'm not sure what this was about either. Probably must have been something about international, maybe how American economy is tied into people of the world and yada yada. I don't know, but that was my job. Was people would send me an article having to do with, say, world economy and that kind of thing, and I had to somehow come up with some kind of illustration to grab people's attention so they would want to read this article. This one was back in the 90s. There was this thing called the World Wide Web and the internet that no one had ever heard of. So in this case, they must have said, well, gosh, now we're in business night and day. It doesn't really matter. We do business with people from all over the world. and this huge connection, and somehow you have to show this for our brochure, whatever this corporate company was. So this is the concept I came up with, which I thought worked okay. So gets your idea across. Now the internet, everyone's familiar with it. So, but back then, no one had heard of it. This one was a company in Cambridge. I did many illustrations for them. This is a big corporate job. I did a whole bunch of illustrations, and it actually helped me buy my first house on Cape Cod in Brewster after I finished this. So, in this particular image, yeah, my wife would make fun of me kind of, because she just thought, oh, you know, just this simplified design. And I don't know if she thought much of it, but I wound up sending it to a stock house in New York City, and I actually kept track of how many times they resold it. And I don't know, they must have sold it 30 or 40 times. People would buy it and use it for, you know, magazines or whatever image, but it's just kind of this very sort of you know, generic way of you know, teamwork, hitting your target, and blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Get back to where we're going. Oh, so then around 1999 or so, end of the 90s, I was doing that. I also started painting again. My wife said, you know, you went to school for fine art. Do you think maybe you should start painting again? So, and my daughter was finishing high school. So I said, yeah, okay. I picked up the brushes and started doing some oil paintings for fun. I just thought as a moonlighting thing, I would maybe try to put some paintings in a gallery. And I went down to the fish pier on a gray, you know, spring day, probably in Cape Cod. And the landscape wasn't very inspiring that day, but the fish pier looked really, really cool, you know, with the colors they wear, the colors of the boats and the architecture. And I like painting people. So I started doing these paintings of fishermen. This was not one of the first one, but this was on the cover of American Art Collector magazine, 97. So, and I wanted to point out, I still do this figure classes at my studio, and some people, you know, would wonder, well, why do you have to paint people all the time? It's like, well, I make a living from painting the fishermen, you know, and doing landscapes as well. But I do so many paintings that involve people. It's good to practice painting people, you know, because as we all know, it's difficult and it takes a lot of practice to do faces and people.
That's a nice one. Look at that, Ken.
Thank you. So this was also at the Chatham Fish Pier. As a young woman who was working, and I was really interested in the fact that you know, there's so many men down there, but a young woman working, that was really interesting. And I was watching her for a couple hours, and it was October, so there's hardly anyone down there. So I went over to explain to her that I wasn't just a pervert. You know, I was been there for a couple hours watching her, but I gave her my card and told her what I was up to, and I asked her to come, you know, maybe pose in the studio sometime. And she did come. She wore this same outfit, and she brought some gear, some ropes and things, and she sat in here. We all painted her in my studio. With this one, I had taken a lot of photos and video of her working, and there was actually a parking lot behind her. So I, you know, drew her into my painting, and then I just did this imagery of the Chatham Harbor that I had to kind of make up, you know, so I didn't see like a parking lot with pavement and cars behind her. But yeah, I've done several paintings of her that's been pretty popular. So this is my studio, and this was 2006, I believe. So this is when I bought the house. It was a 3-car garage, and I thought, well, this is you know, this could be a space I could work in. So this is how it looked at the beginning. And this is Jerome Green, who, as I understand it, he recently did a painting demo for you guys. So the only window I had in here was over at one end, this little window. So Jerome helped doing the construction of cutting that out, framing in larger windows. And this is how it wound up looking. And it's never looked that good again since then. Now it's a total mess, but this is pretty much how it looks on a good day when I have my painting group here. This is, you know, pre-COVID, but, you know, we'll have the model over by the fireplace or in the middle of the room in this case, and we'll all work in here together. And I have lots of local people, local musicians, people of note. And sometimes this is Dermot Mulroney, who was an actor, a Hollywood actor, been on many TV shows and movies, and he was the guest conductor for the Pops by the Sea that year. So I wrote to his mom. His parents live in Orleans. So I wrote to her, not knowing that she's actually friends with Helen Addison at the Addison Art Gallery, where I show my work. But I wrote to her and explained who I was, and if she could convince him to come pose for us while he's in town, I'll give her the painting. And so it actually worked. Sometimes you just have to ask. And usually people will say no, but once in a while people say yes. So so he came and he played the cello. He's actually an accomplished cellist, and he sat for us, and we painted. So there's my painting. And there's Jerome Green in the pink shirt over there. And this one way over the right, that's Jackie Reeves. I don't know if some of you might know her work. She's a wonderful artist too.
Are you making notes, Michael?
You're supposed to be taking notes?
I'm taking notes. I'm also thinking, I was going to say, but I'm muted. Jackie lives behind me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She lives in Sandwich, and she literally lives 50 or 60 yards from my house.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's a wonderful artist. Great person too.
Yes, she is.
Michael's in charge of our demo artists and inviting them to come.
Oh yeah, we can get her. And then in the middle right next to Dermot is Kelly Knowles. She's an artist by Rock Harbor. And let's see. This was just an example of a model posing and different viewpoints. You can kind of see what goes on in the studio here. And that's another overview. Okay, so this is what I was planning on painting today. So I don't have a model here, but I'll work from this photo. A lot of times when I have a model posing, we'll ask them if we can take photos. And so I have a collection of photos just from previous sessions. This was from the Chatham Creative Arts Center when I taught a weekend workshop. A model we've had several times, and she collects vintage clothing. So she would just bring different outfits. So this was she looks like an Italian Renaissance painting or something. So I wanted to show you this before. When I pull it up next to my canvas, it's going to look different because the camera focusing on a TV screen. I have a large screen TV here. The screen doesn't look the same to the camera. It's going to look kind of bluish. But I wanted you to all to see make note of the color. Can you see my cursor when I move it around?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see the color a little bit better. I'm going to talk about I'm going to do an undertone. I start with a tone on my canvas, and usually it's a gray, maybe like this bluish gray. I tend to go warmer. A lot of times I try to think of a tone that's going to work with the shadow area of the skin. So sometimes I go gray, sometimes I go a little kind of a warm gray with my underpainting. I don't work on white because I feel like if I work on white, anything you put down is going to look dark. Even the light on the skin is going to look dark compared to a white canvas. So I just have a hard time with that. So this is just the way I work, and not necessarily the right way. It's just, a lot of people work the way I do, and this is the way I do it. But this has a lot of nice warm tones, like here on the inner fabric. These purples will be nice. So that's what we're going to do. All right. So you'll be able to see me, and you can see how different it looks here.
Yeah.
You'll be able to see my palette, and Jan will be in charge of trying to work the camera, because we can do stuff like this. We can ask people right now, you can see my palette and the me and as I'm working.
That didn't work.
I also have this kind of thing where you'll be able to see a more close-up version of my canvas, all three at once. If anyone's looking at a tablet or a phone, this might get confusing. I don't know. You can let us know. If you like to see all three things at once, that would be good. I won't be mixing colors that much, so you might not want to see my palette the whole time. So I'm manipulating this. While I start working, then Jan can be in charge of all that.
Oh, is there a way to remove the gallery of participants? So
Yeah.
it's more a full screen?
On your, that I don't know if you can do it for everyone. I think what happens right now, I see a big picture at the bottom and a lot of little pictures at the top.
Yeah, so if I take out me.
If you go to
Speaker view.
If you go to full screen, Next to speaker view, gallery view, and full screen. If you go to full screen, it gets rid of everybody else.
Gallery view.
But,
Nope.
but not for everyone. It only does that for you. So if everybody wants to get rid of extra pictures, well, actually now I see everyone on the side. So,
Yeah.
but you can move that little sidebar around. So you can play with that.
All right. I've moved it off as far as I can.
I'm gonna spotlight this. Let's see. Is everyone looking at me at the
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I don't see me. I don't. You see me and the canvas. All right. I'm just gonna start then. If you can't see what you're supposed to see, then just let me know. Or I'll just let
Oh,
you.
what's the surface that you're working on?
All right. Yeah, I was going to talk about that. So thanks for bringing that up. So what I've been working on lately is I bought this canvas. I think it's Richardson is the brand. It's really thin, almost like paper thin. But so I was telling Jan earlier that I used to work on these masonite panels that were gessoed, gesso board from Ampersand. But masonite, you know, after you have 20, 30, 40, they just start to add up and you get this, you know, a box full of heavy masonite. It's a pain. So I decided maybe if I work on the canvas, if the painting is just something I'll save, but I don't care that much about, it doesn't take up much room. You know, you can put it in a box, pile them up. If I do like it, I will glue them to a board. But when I'm working on it, I tape this to a piece of plywood. Now my painting, I used to work 12/16. Now I'm mostly working 14 by 18. So 14 by 18. I cut this canvas 19 by 15. And I tape it down because I know I'm going to lose about 1/4 of an inch all around. Then I do my painting in here, and then the plywood is going to fit somewhere within this area, and I can move the painting a little bit over one way or the other. Try to see how it fits best on the plywood, and then I'll glue it down. You can take it to a frame shop and or have it dry mounted. I use either PVA glue, which is archival, or Miracle Muck. It's called Miracle Muck, and you can brush it on one side of the canvas and then on the board, and then roll it with a roller, real flat. Put it face down on a table, then put a lot of weights on the back of the painting, and it just squishes it down. Let it dry overnight, and then it winds up looking like this. If you can see that, I can't see what you guys are looking at. All right, so this is a piece of plywood. Originally, the canvas would have come out over the edges, and then once it's glued down nice and flat, I just take a nice sharp utility knife and run it around the edge. Face down and cut it down, and you get this nice panel that I can frame. So that's the story of that. So now, like I said, I don't like to work on a white canvas, so a lot of people will say not to use black. I've been using some black with my underpainting a little bit. I think black is something in painting sometimes to avoid because I think it's a crutch. You know, if you are mixing colors, you should learn how to mix colors. And I think if you're a beginner, say you have a red and you want a deeper red, well, maybe you mix some colors with it. You don't just add black. You know, it's a little too simplified. So now I just take a big brush. This is like a 2-inch brush or something, and I'll just mush it around. It's good to get some colors down. I mean, just something on the canvas, dirty it up.
Are you dipping that in Gamsol to thin it?
Yeah, and it's really like a balancing act of I tell people to do this during workshops, and sometimes I'll call it a wash because it is kind of a wash, but at the same time, you wash it on and then it's all wet, and then some people can't work on it for hours, especially if you're using something like turpenoid, because turpenoid seems like take forever to dry. I use a teeny bit of Gamsol, mineral spirits, and some liquid. And with these these typically are like, these studies that I do during the week, or I'll do today, typically 3 hours. Today it'll be like 2.5 hours, I guess. Liquid will stay pretty wet, but it starts to set up and get sticky. It also helps as a wash underneath. The paint on top will dry a little faster, I think, because it mixes in with the liquid underneath. So if you like working wet into wet, then you might want to use something else, just linseed oil or some other kind of medium. Because you can come back the next day and it'll still be wet and you can still work into it a little bit. That's what acrylic painters don't understand, is the beauty of things staying wet so you can continue to work into them. Like for me, working on acrylics, or it's just frustrating because you mix a nice color and then after a while you come back, it's like, oh, I gotta mix it again because it's all dry now. So all right. So you can brush this around until it's kind of uniform, or you can leave the brush strokes showing. Someone like Richard Schmid will do a brush like, and just leave a lot of rough edges, Maybe use a real big brush and it looks real sloppy. And but it's kind of cool looking. But then I watched him do a demo and he talked about doing that because it looks artsy and people like that, which I thought sort of cheapens the whole. I find it a little distracting, And if it's kind of forced, to me, it's like, okay, here's someone trying to look real cool, It can look really cool. It probably looks cooler than what I do. All right, so anyway, so what I have here is it's kind of a little bit of a warm tone. And that's it.
So to achieve that color, you used black and red?
Well, I do different things, but today I used ivory black, and I actually used some raw umber, so it's got a brownish touch to it. Now, looking on my screen, I think what you see is probably a little browner. I think
Yep.
it's, what?
It's brown.
This is going to look redder because this TV screen, it sees this as a blue light. So I see it as pretty true colors, but I think it's going to look blue to you, and because my iPhone adjusts, it's going to see that as it's going to look redder, because of the blue. So yeah, at some point while I'm working, I might hold up a piece of cardboard over that to block it, and you'll see the color will change here.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'll try that right now and see if it works. So that's the downside of Zoom, things like that. So wait a minute. Okay.
Mhm.
Change it all, or is it pretty much the same?
I see a difference.
So it should look
Seems
more raw,
deeper.
Yes.
more umber. Like before, it probably looked more like burnt sienna, but it's actually more like an umber color. So
Wow.
I try different techniques. That I also might mix in green. You could put a little green in here. I think it doesn't matter. I play with different effects because when you look at, as you know, like with a skin tone shadow, a lot of times there's a lot of green in the shadows, which is something that I was doing a workshop and I was explaining that to the artist, and the model kind of almost turned green when she heard that. So green? Well, no, in the shadows, that's what people look that way. So I wonder if, let's see, that's the best view, or I also have is that the only
Can I
thing?
just do that?
I just changed that to a closer view.
Okay.
Add spotlight. Now I'm wondering if people like seeing two things at once, if that bothers anybody or if that's helpful.
Okay.
What do you think?
Not getting any response. It looks okay to me. You can put,
Looks okay to me as well.
All right.
I'm not distracted.
Hey,
There's
Paul.
nothing shiny in that
Lydia.
picture.
I
Yep.
can. Looks good to me.
Paul, it's Lydia here, and I'm just wondering if you would be willing to just mention what colors you are mixing in, if you're doing any mixing.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be very helpful, because otherwise you'll waste a camera on the palette.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Well, this one, yeah, I can't get much closer with this one, so I'm gonna. Oh, but I do have a palette, a zoom like right down to my palette. So when I get to mixing fresh tones, I'll
Well,
switch.
even if you just tell us what colors you're mixing, it will be helpful.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, first I got to get a drawing down. So what I do is generally I'm just taking burnt sienna, raw umber, just something sort of a brownish color to get started. And this is almost kind of site size. I mean, I have heard about the same as my canvas here, so that should work out pretty well. Work out the composition. Of course, I want her to be pretty centered, pretty much the way she is here. If you're working with a live model, you have to make these decisions. You know, am I going to do head to toe? Am I going to do just a portrait down to the waist? I've decided I probably will do pretty much what I have here. So I have a filbert, medium size, flat. This way I can get some larger marks. I can get some thin marks depending on how I hold my brush. All right. So I start off just by doing just a big block in. You start with really big shapes, right? Basically, that's what's going on, right? So I look, one thing is against another. Okay, so you've got a shoulder here and a shoulder there, top of the head. This is how I measure visually. Okay, you can also, you can hold up your brush, measure one thing to the next. I probably should measure more than I do. Usually I'm just kind of winging it as I go along. Oh, and I also usually like to warn people that, results are not guaranteed. You know how it is when you're working on a painting. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes you wind up wiping the whole thing out, right? So, and sometimes, yeah, some of my best paintings, I'll work and then I whip the whole thing out and work on it some more, then wipe the whole thing out, and then finally I get it right, and then it winds up turning. You shouldn't get too married to like what you've started with. I see people put marks down, and just because the mark's there doesn't mean you have to go with it. Like if something needs to move, it needs to move. So that's why working in oils is fun, because it stays wet. You can make changes, right? If you make that same mark with, say, watercolor or acrylic, you might be wishing that it was somewhere else, that mark. So the drawing part is just something that comes with practice, of course. But you'll note that I'm not drawing. I'm going to tilt this. I'm getting a lot of reflection from the lights above. Yeah, so if you're drawing with a pencil point or something like that, tendency is to work in just tiny little shapes, make little lines. And I'm using this brush that's, I don't know, not quite a half an inch, but it's got a wider edge to it. And I'm putting in bigger shapes, right? I start off with the bigger shapes and then worry about details later. Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, go ahead and throw them out there. Comments.
You're not focusing on values at this point?
Right now, right. I'm just doing, I have my medium tone in there. my undertone, and now I'm just drawing where things are going to go. And once I get the drawing down, because I have that tone down that's kind of wet, I'll be able to just wipe away the highlights, which is the fun part.
Schulenburg's rag.
The Schulen rag is what Jerome has named it, my Schulen rag. An old T-shirt, but I've been using the same T-shirt for years, I think. So it's just I need to get a new T-shirt. But that's the magic rag, and you'll see that's the fun part. I mean, I'm not the only person who works this way. I think it must be the way I learned at BU. So I stuck with it. But it used to be we would use turpentine medium, right? So, which was great because you put turpentine down with little oil and varnish, and it smelled good. And then turpentine will evaporate right away. So all that was left was the oil and the varnish, and it would be nice and sticky. You could work into it. But then we all learned that turpentine was kind of toxic, deadly, so no one uses it anymore. So now we're using mineral spirits, which dries a lot slower. So you can put down your undertone and it just stays wet, which is a bit of a pain. But amazing we all survived, or those of us who went to college, back then, art school, we're a small room with 15 people all throwing turpentine around like crazy, and amazing that we survived or still around. Yeah, so you'll notice I'm not really haven't focused too much on features and stuff. I think she's got a slight tilt to her head, so I'll just put in the eyes are somewhat there. I'm not going to outline the nose. I'm just going to say the shadow side of the nose is here. Her lips. About there. So I'm just kind of working in generalities, right? Yeah, doing a portrait type of thing was it's kind of like walking a high wire, because it's easy to fail very badly at doing that. I was going to do like a figure from the back because I'm good at doing a back. You don't have to do a face. You can paint someone from the back. A lot of people think there's not much going on in the back, so they want to paint the back. But I usually find that it can be very interesting. All right, so I'm just feeling my way around here.
Are you going to be able to add color on top of this? Is it going to be too wet, too dark?
Oh, no, the color will be fine. So it's going to start getting a little dry. But what happens is, okay, so for instance, there'll be color back here. So I can take my rag like this. This is going to be, this kind of blue, this will be behind her. So this way, instead of trying to fill in as I go all this darks, I mean, there aren't that many light areas, really. There's a light here, there's a light here. So if you cover the whole thing with a medium tone, I kind of feel like you can make a lot of progress all at once. All right, so now there's this thing she's sitting next to, which is a very light tone to it. I'm not going to get too worried about some folds and in and out on the fabric here. I'm not going to worry too much about it. You can hear that texture of the linen or canvas. And there are some flowers down here. I'm not very good at flowers, generally. I don't feel like I am. Never really practiced wood flowers.
So your canvas, is that a type of linen?
You know, when I bought it, I thought it was linen, and it has a very smooth texture. But then when I looked it up, I think it is a canvas. It's funny, from the back, it has a dark look to it like linen. So I don't know. It was less expensive than linen, so it probably was canvas. But mostly it's like a portrait grade. So for painting this size, it's I felt like it's a good, I don't want too much texture. Okay, so there's a lot of colors going on here, but basically it's just lighter on this side. I could worry about color later. And I'm still I'm wiping this down to like a medium. I'm not getting all the way back to white because I don't, like I said, if I get this all the way back to white, when I put the skin tone down, it's going to look dark against that color. So it looks lighter than the background now, but it's going to look even brighter when I put the color down. Okay, so she's very bright on this side of her face. There's a very bright spot like in here. And her brow. And it's okay. I don't know if it's okay or not. I use my finger. Is it okay as far as health-wise? I don't know, but. So getting these things in the right spot, it just takes time and practice. And you know, sometimes people will say like, oh, you know, when they talk about people who are talented and it comes easy, it's like, well, you do it your whole life, it gets easier. You know, it's like playing the violin. You don't just take a weekend violin lesson and say, yeah, I can't play the violin. You know, it's like you got to spend years learning how to do it. Sometimes I also might take a dry brush and just like rub away. Because right now I'm just looking for where I want my tones, the planes of the face. I can get in there pretty tightly with a brush like that. And maybe not too hard. So wipe away some of the tone, and I don't want it too dark here, but now I can adjust it. Maybe I start off with more contrast, but you know, in the end, it's not going to be too much of a hard shadow there. Sometimes what I do is I take my rag and I take the this end of the brush, and I can get in there with fine detail like that. Rub it pretty hard.
It's almost as though you're painting with the rag.
Well, exactly.
You're getting so much definition.
Well, yeah, I'm drawing with that rag for sure. Yeah, right now, the eye is just a big dark shape. You know, I'm not getting into too many details. That'll come later. The highlight on the nose here. Okay. The lower lip is a little lighter than the upper lip. Her chin. So it's a lot like drawing with charcoal. If you've done charcoal drawing, you know, maybe sometimes people will start off with put a tone of charcoal dust down, you know, then draw into it and then erase certain parts. I have a smaller brush. I feel like maybe start getting a little more detailed, or like fine tuning. I think that lip might have been a little low. I'm not sure it's going to look much like her because I've got a pretty, you know, I'm under some time constraints today. what I can do in 2 hours.
You said you weren't crazy about doing commission portraits.
Well, you know, some people get a lot of money for commission portraits, so I might be able to be inspired, I suppose. But
But
yeah,
is that
if I could, if I could do
capturing the expression? Is that the piece that's frustrating?
no, I think about commission portraits is that you're trying to please somebody. Like if I'm just painting someone and it comes out really good and they like it, then that's good. That's fine. If I'm doing a commission, they might, you know, well, can you make me look this way? Can you change that? Can you? I don't think it looks exactly like me. You know, even if you take a photo of someone, they might go like, I don't think that photo looks like me. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, you can make some adjustments and change things. And I don't know. I have done some commission portraits. Um, I love like some of my favorite paintings are like, you know, sergeant portraits. I think sometimes the ones I see look like someone will say, can you paint this photograph? Here's a photo someone's taken of me. They don't realize, well, I don't like working for someone else's photos. One reason is, two, someone gives you a portrait photo. Usually they're smiling, so it looks like they're posing for a photo. The light is very flat, which looks okay for a photo, but for a painting, it's very boring. So like with this one, you'll see they have a shadow side and a light side. I don't have a flash look.
Okay.
I had a friend who painted portraits of animals, and she preferred to paint animals because they didn't complain.
Well, right. I read an article, well, I don't know, it was an article or a book, or Mort Walker, you know, who did Beetle Bailey. He was at some convention and they were supposed to draw like, something needs to be muted. Who's that? So, yeah, so they were doing just for fun at this convention, doing caricatures of people. And of course, he does Beetle Bailey, so he made people look like a cartoon, and he wasn't getting a whole lot of takers at his booth. But then, you know, the guy, maybe Stan Lee or something, who did Spider-Man, or he was getting lots of people because he made everyone look like a superhero. So yeah, so you know, if you're painting a portrait, it helps, I guess. People like it if you can make them look attractive. That's always good.
Do you ever start with or keep in mind the most prominent feature that you want to accent, or do you work against that, or something totally different?
Most prominent
Now, if
feature?
a person has nice cheekbones or something about their nose or about their lips, that you come back to that to make sure that becomes, I don't know, the focus
Well, here,
without caricature.
I'll point this out. I guess, you guys,
Oh, okay.
like, this is a painting I did of a model here in the studio, and she actually has quite a prominent nose. And it was very difficult because actually, after painting it, I reduced it a little bit. So she's very pretty, and her nose is one of her defining features. So it's kind of like it's a trick to get it, make it, you know, big enough so it's like, oh, all right, that says that that's her, you know. But you know, you walk a fine line. You could, if it's a little too big, it becomes sort of a silly caricature.
Mm.
If it's too small, then it doesn't look like her. So, but that's what makes a person who they are. You know, if they've got prominent lips or whatever it is, you have to pick up on it and hopefully do it in a way that is that works, so you capture who they are, but yeah, not insult them at the same time. So now, yeah, just rubbing with this, and I tend to sometimes make this air distance from the nose too small. And since we have limited time, I'm not going to work on the drawing too much because I don't want everyone to fall asleep. But I can try to move the eyes up a little bit. Now I'm darkening where those, you know, your eyes pupils will be. a little bit, just to give us a sense of where that's going to go. I'm going to rub with the back of my brush, bring it out a little bit. Is any of that coming through on camera?
It is. I'm just wondering if I should spotlight the canvas alone.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. I mean, you could play with it. See, I just wiped out the nose a bit because rather than try to redraw it, makes it a little easier to redraw some of these details. I usually think of the nose as there's a lower plane here, so I can put the nostrils in maybe, but you know, there's a plane here, there's a plane up the side. It's a big shape, right? So there are nostrils in there. I'm not going to worry about them too much. It's more important to about things as, you know, as large shapes.
Okay.
Okay, this is a bright spot here. I tend to bounce around a little bit too, because you know, you walk away from a painting and you come back and you see something you didn't see before. So just by moving around the canvas, if I move down here, I'll come back to the face and say, oh, wait a minute, I need to move something up here, you know. Now I see I need to lighten this a little bit. So maybe I will come down here. I thought a lot of people have trouble with hands, so I could attempt doing some hands. Painting a live model, it's hard because the hands tend to change. It's hard to get them back in the same position every time. But if we have a 20-minute sittings, you know, with breaks in between, if I have them drawn in from one 20-minute setting, then usually they're just blocked in, and if they change, I will just you know, go with my original drawing, unless they sit down and they look better the second time. So once it's blocked in, then I know where things go. Okay, there's a thumb. I might take this brush. Can just rub out these fingers.
What kind of brush is that?
This one is a hard bristle brush. So what is it? Roger Simmons. It's just a bristle.
Short, stubby?
It is now. After a while, I usually get flats, and eventually they start to get rounded on the end and they get shorter just from rubbing on canvas. So and I'm not good at throwing away my brushes. I just keep buying more, and then I wind up with lots of used. I like the fresh ones, but then it's hard to throw away the old ones. You know? I just should get them all, take them all over to the swap shop. Someone will enjoy them. And you know, of course, it's always good to get back from your painting. I'm going to roll around chair so I can get back a little bit. You know, it's good to get away, step back, and see what you're doing. People tend to get real close and they're working on little details, and they miss the big picture. You know, I felt like that needed to move down a little. Sometimes I will take another brush. Let's see, could be anything. This is a big, kind of a soft brush, and just go back, make sure that the areas that I want in shadow are just sort of blocked in. Okay, there's a plant down here. Fabric is coming down. A bunch of people have more questions.
You spend a lot of time with this part of the composition,
Well,
building it,
yeah. I mean, when we have
building the framework.
when we hire the model, usually it's 20-minute sitting. And I usually try to get a drawing done in about 20 minutes. I mean, at least the majority of it. Sometimes she comes back, I'll try to finish it up or even continue with the drawing, maybe another 20 minutes. But yeah, because I like to get, I guess some people like Rosie Nadeau goes right to color. And I guess she's drawing and she's filling in color at the same time. This is just how I do it, right? So I like to get things where they, otherwise I start putting in the colors and realize, wait a minute, everything's got to move, you know?
Mm.
So let's see. It's nice to have a dark-haired model because you have a nice dark shape to work against. So I can use the back end, the back end of my brush, not the brush end, but on my rag. And around the eye here. Yeah, I think I'm getting some of that cheekbone. She's a great model. She hasn't been responding lately. She kind of stopped modeling for us. Kind of busy doing other things, I suppose. But yeah, she collects vintage clothing, so she would come dressed like 1920s or 1950s. And so I think this is kind of the fun part because, you know, just bringing the luminosity out kind of little by little.
It's nice to be able to really refine the shapes that you want to be there.
Yeah, so she has the shape of her hair. And when I do this, like I pull her out of the background this way, get these nice marks with the rag that it creates a little atmosphere, you know, rather than just have a big flat shape. Eventually, it would, you know, probably be colorful brush marks. So that eventually that'll be red. All right, I think I'm getting down. Drawing is not so bad. Okay, so her hair kind of comes down this way. But yeah, painting, I enjoy painting people, but it is really tough because just a little change of a gesture or attitude in the face, I mean, makes a huge difference. So it definitely takes a lot of practice. It's easy to get, I felt like the mouth is probably a little large. And when I start painting, the drawing will change a little bit too. It's like I said, you don't get locked in or married to your marks, you know, just like that can't change. You know, when I start putting things down, I might decide to move things a little bit. This is going to soften up. I have a very hard edge or a very dark division between the chin and her neck there, but which is going to have to soften up when I put the colors in. I can lighten this up a little. It's going to be the shadow, purple. I feel like the hands could probably be a bit lower, but I'm not going to worry about it. If I was going to be a real fanatic about it, like That's probably good enough. Okay, so what time is it?
It's about 12 after 11.
What time do we go to? 1, supposedly?
Yeah, 1:45, because we got to be out of here by, oh, that's right. We're not in the cultural center, but we've, it's 12 to, it's 1:45,
I gotta kick all you out of here. So,
unless you finish earlier.
well, yeah, I mean, we know we can do question and answer. We can talk about whatever.
You can set the pace for that if you want to take a break and get questions and answers, or if you want to keep going.
Are the cameras working out okay? Everyone can see?
Yeah,
They are.
I can.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jan, if you think you know how, you could, want to do the overhead cam or,
Are we looking for your palette?
yeah, maybe I can do it. Let's see. Gallery.
I don't see where I have a choice for it.
There it is. I'm going to put this on too, just add spotlight. Now, if you can see all three things.
Yes.
So what I do here, I feel like the drawing is, say it's close enough, I can work with it. So I usually take my palette knife. I just took a workshop with a very fine artist through Zoom, Hollis Dunlap. And he's interesting. He does very good figurative paintings, and our styles are very, very different. So he was talking about, he doesn't pre-mix any colors, which is exactly what I'm going to show you, what I'm going to do now. I always pre-mix my colors, to some extent anyway. So for a flesh tone, a basic flesh tone, okay, I'll start with some white. Terra Rosa. Terra Rosa, not every company makes it, but you find a good company. I think it might be Winsor Newton, I'm not sure. And then yellow ochre. All right, that's a very red. And what I do is I'll hold up my palette knife, maybe looking at the model and comparing it over here and here. This is actually a good color for a sleeve. So now I'll move it aside and say, okay, I'm going to work with that later. I'll take some of it. I need some flesh tone. That's too deep. That'll be good for her sleeve. All right. So this is much lighter, but it's going to work with that other color. It's just basically a lighter version. This might be okay with her nose. That's just Terra Rosa and yellow ochre. Now, Terra Rosa, yellow ochre, and I'm going to add a little green. Prussian green is what I like.
You said Prussian green?
I like to add, yeah, it could be, you could try different greens. Prussian green is kind of a yellow green. And because the Terra Rosa and yellow ochre is just gonna, it's kind of a screaming, it's gonna be too bright or too pink. It'll be nice in the right spot. But see, this is a muted tone, and it's actually much better for certain areas, having that green. So now I have 3 different colors that I've pre-mixed, okay? I usually will mix up about 5 or 6 or 7. I might keep going because I have the color of her dress and everything else. I still haven't really gotten the highlight. So what I'm going to do is I'll have some white, some yellow ochre and Terra Rosa like usual. I'm going to make it real bright. But I feel like there's, in that highlight, yeah, there's green in there. It's not just a bright pink, which would, a lot of beginners, that would be the tendency, just to go super pink with it. So you probably can't see that from where you are, but this is actually, yeah, it's a mixture of those original colors, but has a lot of green, and it might look white to you, but it's not. It's got a little bit of green tint to it. That'll be the brightest spots. Now that I'm looking at this, I feel like her neck could be a little smaller. Okay, back to mixing. I'm using a little less white. I'm going to try to get a color that's going to go, like, say, on her neck. Same thing, just more of it. Maybe some, what is this? I have a yellow ochre. This is raw ochre, I guess. A little browner. And more of that green. I never really went around my palette, which I should do, I suppose. I'm going to add some burnt sienna. And that's pretty darn warm. I'm not sure I'm liking this at all. I'm going to add some Viridian to make it even cooler green. That's getting better, I think. So I forgot to go around the palette, which I probably should. I think using a limited palette is good, and I'm all for using the Zorn palette, which I never do because I actually have a lot of colors. The Zorn palette is very limited. It's just, what is it, red, black, white, and what else?
Yellow.
Yellow. That's it. And it gets incredible paintings. I like to be able to grab what I want, and have it available, kind of like a pastel artist. You have 200 colors to choose from. Cad yellow. This is probably cad yellow medium. Cad red light. Cad red deep. Yellow ochre. What did I say that was? Raw ochre. Terra rosa. Burnt sienna. Raw umber. This is the sap green, and I get the sap green from Gamblin because I got it from somewhere else, and it was kind of light. And I like the Gamblin sap green is very dark, so I want like a dark green. That's good. And then Prussian green.
Do you use any blue?
Yeah, I'm getting to that. So I'm going towards a Viridian. That's a blue green, and then ultramarine blue is here on my palette. I also will use like cobalt. I have Prussian. I have different colors that are sort of, on the sideline, ready to be used when I need them. Now, this is my travel kit, this travel portable paints, so I don't take everything with me necessarily or lay them all out now. So, but I have an ultramarine blue. This is a dioxazine purple, which I think will come in handy doing her dress. Alizarin crimson. And this is a quinacridone rose or quinacridone red. And the reason it's over here is because it's like a pink red, as opposed to these, which are real warm red. So if you're familiar with that, it's separated. It's actually more in tune with these, the purple and the alizarin crimson. And then my white over here. And I put some black over here just to separate it out. Sometimes I will use black sparingly, like maybe add some to her hair to make it dark, but we all know, if you're familiar with it, black will tend to dry and turn gray unless you varnish it. So it can be a little tricky. So I'm just going to fiddle with my drawing. I'm taking a break.
What white is that, Paul? Is that titanium or something else?
Good question. A lot of times I'll use, it's called Utrecht White, which is actually, I'm all about compromise, I guess. So Utrecht White is like part titanium and part zinc. It's a mixture. So I think it probably has, qualities of both. I do have some flake white, which is good for thicker application. Has a different kind of consistency. I like using that sometimes. But just this Utrecht white is what I use more often. Okay, back to color mixing. So now I've got kind of a shadow color I'm not in love with, but let's see. I want something for her cheek. So I'm taking some of that Prussian green, some of this raw, what is it? Raw sienna?
Raw ochre.
Raw ochre, yeah, there you go. But her cheek is kind of pink, so I'm going to use that quinacridone because it's a pinker red, not just it's not a red, you know, like a Chinese fire engine red or something. But it's also toned down, so that's why I added, you know, the green. So.
Pardon the interruption. I'm not familiar with raw ochre. I'm familiar with yellow ochre. Is there like a burnt ochre and a raw ochre the same as there is with siennas or umbers?
Right. So I'm not sure what it is chemically, but where is it? Can't find my tube at the moment. But yeah, it's yellow ochre. It's just a deeper version. It's less yellow. It's almost, you could take a yellow ochre. You might be able to mix it. Just looking at it, I'm saying if I had a yellow ochre, I could mix in some raw umber, maybe a little burnt sienna, and it would come up with this brown color. It's kind of a brown that's in between all those colors. A little darker than yellow ochre, but you know.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's all. Okay, so now I have a reddish. Now, when I have all this family of colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just for flesh tones. And I'll mix within those. So they're pre-mixed, but it doesn't mean I'm done. So if I put something down and I don't think it works, I can still add more colors, but this is something I can work with. And you can see there's a family of colors that are kind of similar here. And I'll start kind of blending on my canvas as I go. So maybe I'll start putting something down. So for this, I've been using these, I think they're synthetic brushes. Utrecht, it's a filbert mixed synthetic. It has a really nice sharp edge, and it's a filbert, so I can get a wide mark or a thin mark. This one, they tend to get kind of frayed after a while, so splayed out. This one's still not too bad. I'm not too worried about getting really detailed with things at the moment, so it should be fine. So I'll just jump in somehow. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to take a mixture of these, what I've already made, pick a spot on her face, and start going. I see this is kind of a cool, I mixed some of the greenish color with some of the other flesh tone I had, because it's not super.
Is it possible to get closer? Can we get a closer view just of your canvas? Maybe lose the one that has the photo in it so we can really see what you're doing.
Oh yeah, you're done with I can turn off the spotlight here. And I can just
That's
zoom
definitely
in.
better. Yeah.
I can just do this too.
The one just on the canvas isn't very clear. It's not sharp. I don't know if you can
Oh,
adjust
it's not
that.
in focus because it's focused on your face, not on the canvas. But that would be great if you could get it.
Yeah, no, I have this telephoto lens across the room, and it only does just so much. I can't really adjust that. So let's see.
So let's just do you and the canvas and the other.
Yeah. I might be able to move this a little closer.
That's good.
Yeah, you can see the fireplace. I'll try not to bump into the computer all the time. All right. So, okay. Now I can use some of this pre-mixed red that I had. I think I'll put here. So now you can't see the pre-mixed colors that I was using, or how I'm using them. I'm going to mix them together as I go along. Gives me a basis to work with. That light that I mixed before, that I said might look like white to you, it's just kind of a light green I'm putting here. These are like the brightest spots. And it turns to a pinkish color here. I'll have to send everybody a JPEG of, when I'm done or something, because you can't really see it on camera so well.
No medium, Paul?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a thing here with these quick sketches. I have Liquin. I really don't use it that much. If I want to do a large area here, I might use some medium, but right now I'm just using straight paint. So you can see how just using straight paint, I have this surface down. It's not really wet. I mean, I can rub it off, but it's pretty, it's pretty accepting of new paint. So I can just put it right down on it. But if I hit a spot that has a tone, like on the hair, yeah, I've kind of learned that I can mix colors into the shadow area, right? So like when I get to here, the color that I put down will mix with this because there is some paint still there. It'll kind of blend together, hopefully nicely. This side of the face is not nearly as bright as that side. So let's see. And it is considerably greener. So I think at this point, everything I do is probably going to make the painting a little brighter, I guess. So I had my tonality. I knew this spot was it was an area where light was hitting, and not as bright as that side, but I'm making it brighter than my original drawing. That makes sense. Let's see. This is really just a block in. I don't usually get too caught up in one part of the face. I'm going to try to like block in more. Something that is very common mistake that people make is that they'll paint a young woman like this and they'll like, well, why does she looks a lot older. What's wrong? Something's wrong. And it's because people over accentuate these kinds of shadows. There is a shadow there, but you can almost eliminate it or just really, not over accentuate it. People tend to grab onto stuff like that. They say, well, there's a shadow here, there's a line there. And with, I had a painting of Jerome who did a demo for you guys recently. And, for a craggy old guy like that, you can pick out all the lines and deep shadows and stuff, but it's not always the best way to portray someone. And you don't have to over accentuate that, under accentuate a little.
Are you working from light to dark or just starting at one spot and moving around her face?
Well, let's see. I'm moving mostly to the light now. I had my drawing down, and I'm basically adding, putting in the sunshine. I'm adding where all these spots where the light is hitting her face. So after wiping away the shadow, I can bring it out, and it tends to pop. Having that deep undertone, colors will look bright and tend to pop. So, of course, with the face, I guess I try to go, for a likeness. So it's very slow going. When I get down here, I make it much brushier and, faster in general. But at this point, it probably looks, kind of like a caricature of of what she's supposed to look like.
No, it looks good. I wish it was closer, but something to bear in mind the next time.
Well, let's see. I don't know if
That's
you-
good.
Yeah, well, I can't hold it like this forever, but you get a good look.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I could probably have a phone like on an arm. I think I tried that once. Had the phone like in front of me, and I try to paint around it. Like, not to bump into it.
That sounds awkward.
Let me take a. I have to turn the heat down. It's really hot in here. Get my sweatshirt off. Oh yeah, right now, stepping back, it just looks like a death mask or something. So it'll start to come. Okay, like I said, there's not a whole lot of shadow there. So I've eliminated that a little bit. So this is another case of just bouncing around a little bit. I'm brushing this on kind of lightly. If I want it to be brighter, I can put more paint down. Right now, I'm just kind of like putting it on just enough to cover a bit. Okay. Let's see. Now, like I said, the nose is just is a shape. I'm not going to outline the nose. It's like there's a shape of colors.
That part of the nose is not easy.
Right. So we've got a little bit of pink on that side. So yeah, everything can be fine-tuned as you go. If that's too much, so you can knock it back, or that's actually getting brighter, but it looks kind of nice. Let's see. I have a color mixed up for the shadow area. So this is very similar. I mixed up a color that's similar to what is already down there, but you see how having that underpainting works with what I'm already doing. So instead of fighting it, trying to put in a shadow, the shadow is already there. Let's see, there's a little bit of pink on my brush, but that's okay because there's some pink in her face coming through.
Paul, how do you prevent your colors from becoming muddy?
Well, one way to make mud is to use complementary colors, I guess. So, when I made my skin tone, that was kind of a warm pinkish skin tone. I added green. If I add too much green, it might start turning to mud. Too many colors, too many different colors will get muddy. When I'm not putting a bright color on something like this, there's a lot of paint here. It'll just turn gray. So they say you should wash on your darks and what do they say? Put it on, lights go on thicker and the darks go on thinner.
That's good to know.
So yeah, when I wipe away these highlights, there's not a lot of paint there. And when I mix up a lot of paint, I make these little piles of paint. And when I put it on, it's going to remain the color that I mix up. My phone is ringing. Let's see. There's nobody. Somehow I got on some kind of call list, so people are calling me all the time. Yeah, so when you saw the colors I was mixing in my palette, they were all like a family of colors. So mixing them together is just going to make more colors that kind of go together. I can't make mud out of that. I'd have to add something totally different. Just that don't work together or something. So this is kind of a nice khaki color, I guess.
Paul, is your model photograph that screen? Can that be turned just slightly? There's a glare from your window on her face.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the sun is actually coming out.
Not here.
You can also block the window better. Is that better?
That's good right there. Yeah, that'll good.
I'm gonna put a cardboard. Talk amongst yourselves.
Perfect. You want to stand there and hold it?
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully they'll stay there. Unfortunately, I have a south light studio. My studio is very nice, except for people prefer a north light for a studio. But we have a lot of sunshine coming in, but it's from the south, so it's actually good that today it's a little overcast. Okay, I should probably look a little faster. This doesn't have to be like a perfect portrait, just to show you what I'm doing. Although we do have time, right?
Yeah, it's 20 of 12.
What time do you take your break?
Whenever you say, you're in charge.
I can paint straight through, so I don't really care. So I guess the thing about doing Zooms, anyone can take a break anytime they want. Go get a coffee or something.
We can, you can't.
I know. I'm fine. Once I'm painting, I'm like in the zones that I can just keep going. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yep. Oh, I can.
So sometimes I might tend to like start to mumble or something.
We'll let you know.
All right. So, at this stage, I'm trying to refine my drawing a little bit as I go. She has nice lips that I'll try working on that now. So I'll mix a red, not too red, because I don't want it to look like a clown or something. So I have a deep red. I'm mixing a little bit of green, and it's going to combine with this brown that's still on there because it's not totally dry. So this is just a dark shape here. I wash my brush a lot. I don't know if you can hear that.
You're washing it with
in mineral spirits, but in between brush strokes, a lot of times I'll freshen it up. Hear that?
Yep.
All right. I can't worry too much about the drawing because we had a lot of ground to cover, but so I'm going to bring the same dark down into one side and adjust it. Now I got to make a little lighter red for the rest of her where the light's hitting it. And what I'm doing, I got some brighter red on my palette I mixed it with some of the flesh tones, maybe some of these kind of colors too. Like not just a pure bright red, because then it would just stand out too much. So I trying to adjust it so it's in the same family of colors.
Paul, I'm so interested that you're only using one brush. I can find myself holding 6 brushes at some points.
Oh, well, I do have, these are the brushes I've used so far, so 5. This was the one for the big, wash. Then I've been mostly just a couple brushes. And this detail work, right, it's just, I just wash it a lot.
Which brush are you using for that now?
This one, it's a Utrecht 239 Filbert mixed synthetic, number 4. This will be all on the recording, I guess, right?
Yep.
So the trouble with painting a nice thing like this is that a nice, beautiful woman, and then the painting never looks as good as she really does. So, but you get the idea. I guess if you spend enough time on it, sometimes the paintings turn out pretty well, if you're lucky. So when I get around to like the eye, it looks, there's a lot of kind of blue actually. It kind of matches the background here, but I'm going to just put in something that looks kind of like a skin tone just to get it started anyway. I don't want to, the eye can look really funny if it starts to get too bright. I mean, the white of the eye. You can always make it brighter at some point.
Are her eyes blue?
No, I'm talking about the white of her eye looks blue. Her eyes are probably brown or hazel. But all right, so don't always advise to go, into this much detail, but sometimes, at this point, but it's kind of nice to know where she's looking. Try to get that established. So yeah, see how I started these, just the block, and it's very dark here, but I'm going to lighten a little bit. And I didn't draw, I mean, I did these at the beginning, the eyebrows. Right now I'm just kind of drawing around them. Rather than color down and then trying to put on an eyebrow. I mean, you can do that too, but I'm going to define the edge of this nostril a little, because I can. Put in a color there. At this point, I've been laying in colors, and it's a little splotchy. So since, it's a pretty young woman, sometimes it's good to blend things a little bit.
Are you planning to use the flesh tones that you mixed already for her arms as well?
Yeah.
And you mixed enough paint to do that? I always find that I haven't mixed enough, and then I have to go back and add more or try to do it again.
Who's asking?
Jan.
Yeah, no, I mixed up. There's plenty. I wind up with leftover. It's better to have too much, because then, sometimes I wind up using it for another painting another day or something, or just, if you have extra, it's better to have some that you need to throw away or something than to wish you had more later. Sometimes I just take my arm like that. All right. So this is entirely too much detail. So now I'm going to not worry about that quite so much. So I think what I'll do, just to add some interest, is pop out a little bit of this blue background. Boy, your eyes look kind of funny. I tend to push the pupils around for a while until they get to the right spot. So with that blue, yeah, it's not a gray blue, so a little white, little ultramarine. And it looks like it's tending toward green. I'm going to use a little bit of Viridian if I really want to match that color. And I'm going to add a little raw umber just because I don't want it to be too blue. So what I tend to do is hold it up like that. You know, maybe hold it in front of my subject matter. And I can compare. At this point, I think I will take a new brush because rather than having to clean one I already have, one that's already dirty. I'm going to add a little hair because I know some of the background I want it to show through. And kind of cut into her hair a little bit, redefine that shape.
Paul, do you just cut out most of the extraneous stuff? I noticed this young lady is sitting on something in your other painting, and flowers to her left.
Yeah.
But I don't see them yet. Will you put them in at the end?
Yeah, probably. I think. See, if this was like a usual 3-hour session, or with you guys, it's a limited session. I've got maybe about an hour left, so I could spend a lot of time working on flowers over here. But that's a whole other subject matter. So I'm concentrating.
Okay.
I usually do the face first because I know I want to try. That's the hardest part.
Well, just a lot of the photos that I work from, and I want to thank you for the invitation the other day that you sent to me. But most of the time in the house, I'll find a picture online that's intriguing. And I often wonder how much of the background that I put in detracts from the model that I've used.
Yeah. Well, you know, the subject matter here would be her face, and so that's what people see first. This would be a nice addition if I, spend enough time on it. I would, eventually maybe put it in kind of loosely, get down to that part. It's just not, and I think because there is this furniture here she's sitting on, and there's that. I mean, it wouldn't be bad to have something just to, offset the composition. So in a way, I'll take a minute there and block in some green.
It's almost like you're framing her.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to add some balance to that.
Yeah.
There's something there. And it's just, see, I can just do a few brush strokes like that. Okay,
Yeah.
now we got something there.
That makes sense.
Which I would define later.
One of the times, I didn't want to cut in earlier, but one of two of the times that I went to your place, I sat next to you, and I noticed you would finish the blocking fairly quickly, but then you would go back and do the nose or the eyes or the lips with one little brush. It would seem like you would spend forever, and I'd spend more time watching you refine the shape. It was incredible for the people who have been asking. It was incredible to watch you just take what would be acceptable probably to 90% of the people, and you just almost like one hair at a time on the brush made it look just like the model. I was amazed. So it does happen a step at a time, not whoosh, it's done.
Well, yeah, that's something that each person has to work on. Like
Yeah.
how far can you push it, and how much accuracy are you going for, and yeah, and when do you quit? So, right, it's like that book, Drawing with the Right Side of Your Brain. And
Yep.
most people will draw an apple, so they just draw what they think a symbol of an apple. They don't actually draw what they're looking at. So you have to learn how to see these things. And
Yeah. Draw on the word and not the image.
right. So yeah, and faces are tough because I could probably spend the whole time just refining the face. Although it's funny sometimes if it all comes together, I have a 3-hour session, but in 2 hours I'll say that I'm done because I don't want to. I've gotten as far as I want to go, and I don't want to
Yeah.
mess. If everything falls together the way it should, that's a good thing.
How often do you paint each week, Paul?
Oh, it's interesting how little I get to paint because I don't know about you people, but my day is usually filled with answering emails and just so much stuff that it's hard to actually get around to working on a painting. That's why I kind of like the figure group that we do, because if I schedule a time and people show up, it's like, okay, we're going to paint no matter what. And you just have to do it. Maybe I'm not as good at scheduling my time at home.
That's why we like it too.
I guess I should schedule my time at home. Just say, these are the hours I'm going to be working. I'm not accepting any email or text messages or.
You pretty much have to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so someone was asking about the arms below. I'll take a medium-sized brush. And yeah, so this is not nearly as complicated as a face. So I can block in. Starting with the kind of a pre-mixed shadow color that I had up above. It was all ready to go.
Lydia was asking a while ago if we could use the studio phone number 2, and I think we did that. Is that right, Lydia? And we found that it wasn't focused nicely enough.
You can try it if you want.
Did you
Studio
refocus?
Phone 2 was the one that did work nicely, and it was the one that was close up on it was the far camera that was out of focus, but I may be mistaken.
You can pin any one of those that you want.
We know, but one of them is not as, shoot,
Yeah.
Everybody's gone. There you are.
It's this zoom lens that has to be at least like.
Thanks so much.
It just gets complicated for people, but if they can do it. All right, so this is a pretty big brush, as you can see. It's flat one way, but I'm making the hands, which are just big flat shapes. Really, they're big flat surfaces. I'm not trying to draw around them with little bits of color. Can make a bold statement. Okay, there's light on the edge of the finger. I think I'll get a slightly smaller brush. Much smaller. There's some nice hands and ears. Sometimes you get really wonderful color going on. And it kind of matches similar to the color on her sleeve there. So we missed the big snowstorm, huh?
I think
That's
it's
for
snowing
sure.
now. It's
Yes.
snowing now in Dennis.
Oh,
It's snowing in Comaquid.
there was like 20 inches of snow up in some parts of Mass.
Just not here.
Wilmington, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I find it amazing that two parts of the same town could be about 15 inches of snow different.
Right. Well, that's like, yeah, it can be all stormy in Dennis and like the sun's out here in Eastham, you know. All right, a block in. We're making some progress. I think I should do that color behind her over here because that would be kind of nice. And I see it, let's see, white, yellow, ochre. I have a lot of colors on my palette, but you'll notice that a lot of times I'm using the same, just a few. I'm going to add a little of that sap green because I don't want it to be too screaming bright, but just bright enough.
Paul, do you think too much about the quality and the direction of your brushstrokes?
Sure. I think, yeah. I think I try to feel like I'm kind of traveling over the surface of whatever I'm painting, I guess. So in here, there's the fold of this fabric, and sometimes I think maybe I shouldn't think too much about that, you know, because I see other paintings where it's like the paint is applied more randomly, but I do what I do, I guess. Hard to change old habits. So I'm refining the shape along there a little bit before I put the color behind it. I just thought that might be a good idea. So yeah, in a case like that, this is a fabric on a chair like behind her, so I could, you know, put the brush strokes kind of going this way to show that happening. I just use some medium on this to make this, you know, spread a little bit better. I feel like there's a little bit of tonality of there. I put that in. And I was a little too bright. I added a little bit of raw umber, I guess, and or was it burnt sienna? Just something to tone it back a little bit. And this, I still have, I mixed this up earlier. I still have some available. So This is a case where you could, let the brush strokes kind of like go rough. I could paint all the way to the edge. Might start to look boring if I just go all the way with one color. I might gradate it. I could, go darker as it goes out, something like that. I feel like it gets a little darker down here. There's this edge of a fabric. It doesn't really mean anything. So I'm just going to paint the edge of the flower. So I'm painting the color around the edge of the flower.
What were the colors you used to mix that blue?
Well, white and ultramarine, and I think I simply just added a little raw umber to tone that blue down. So it just made it a little grayer. Now, with it's easy to get a real cutout shape going, and you don't really want that, So I can get a little. This is a brush that's kind of worn out, kind of splayed, frayed, but it's good for like doing something like hair, and so I can kind of blend the edges here a little bit because it's not just like it shouldn't be a hard edge here, or looking like a cutout or something. So I can, blend a little around the hair, make it look a little less hard edged and defined. And let's see, even bring in some of the color of the background, maybe it's showing through. Looks like that. I can't tell if it's an earring or, yeah. So maybe I'll lose that part. I like this on her forehead, which I haven't gotten to yet, but so you might want to leave something like that in. Everybody still out there?
We are. We're absorbed in what you're doing. How many people are out there painting along with Paul?
Painting too?
I'm sketching.
I am.
I think Lydia said she was going to be all set up to follow.
Wow. Yeah, I wish the image was a little clearer for you to see.
I think the images are good. The close-up of your canvas is not as clear as it would be nice to have, but
Okay.
this is a good view.
Okay. I think what I'll do now is work on this the purple of her dress. So that's just white. That coincidentally it's pretty close to just Taxazine purple. If you want to make it as bright as it is, it might be good to tone it down a little bit. Otherwise, things start to look like cartoon colors. So I just add a little raw umber to make it, it's still in the same family, but it's not like so screaming bright. And so there's hair. I'll paint, you can always paint the hair over again, but I can put rough marks in kind of around where the hair is here. Now I'll mix up the shadow color for her dress. So one story I tell sometimes when I'm doing a demonstration is I had to do a demo for like 50 people at the Chatham Creative Arts Center. And about 5 minutes before beginning, the power went out. So it's a big room full of people and no one can see anything. And it was a pretty sunny day, so there was like lights coming through the windows to kind of distracting us. So I said, well, I'll just start drawing and eventually the lights will come on. So I worked on a drawing and you could kind of see what I was doing, but then they didn't come on. And then our friend, and some of you might know Eva Tomasian, went out to her car and got a flashlight. And so she followed my hand around the canvas with a flashlight so everyone could watch. And the lights never did come back on. Well, not during the demo anyway. But people were happy. They seemed to be anyway.
Well, it's mesmerizing watching you work.
So you're not seeing me mix the colors right now, right? So this was the dioxazine purple. I mixed in some raw umber because it's not a real bright purple.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to mention it would be helpful each time you unmuted people laugh or make a comment, we lose the painting.
You do? Oh.
Yeah, it goes to the person laughing and.
Oh, it's supposed to be, must not be spotlighted. So spotlight for everyone. Is this what you're looking at?
That's what I like looking at.
One way to solve that problem is for everyone to mute themselves so we don't hear extraneous noise.
Well, right now it's spotlighted, so that shouldn't change.
Even so, the extra noise sometimes,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If anyone knows that, I mean, there's so many people. Sometimes people don't know how Zoom works, and so it's hard for everyone to cooperate.
I've heard some pretty funny exchanges in the background sometimes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Paul, when you did that though, now you can't pin.
Oh.
Like I was doing the iPhone 2. I pinned it and now I can't pin it anymore.
Oh, all right. So
if people just mute, that should solve the problem, right?
That's true. Everyone can mute. All right. So let me just try to turn off the spotlight. This will give you something to do for the next hour. You can all practice with your Zoom technique. And if it goes to someone else for like a few seconds, that's not the end of the world, I suppose.
So I'm not muted, but I have my video off. My video is off and you're not seeing my face. I think that's the key.
Okay.
But we see a J when you speak.
Okay.
And the J is not that interesting to look at. Just a letter J.
And we lose the painting.
Is anybody there or did you all disappear? Okay, well, all that was going on, I painted a lot of the dress and added some color to her shawl.
Now, did you just mix the raw, I guess it was raw umber with, was it to soften the purple?
In here, now I don't remember. Probably, yeah.
Okay, because that was while I was floundering around looking for little dots, and I wanted to see how you, because purple for me is a tricky color to work with.
Yeah. So right. So I toned it down. Probably with purple, I would either use Romber Works or something like a green. A green mixed in with purple is nice. It really tones it down.
Okay.
So that. Um, so that's going on. Oh yeah, I was going to mix some blue for the rest of her shawl, which works really nice with this background blue. Oh, now everyone's muted, right? I guess I have to keep talking because.
Well, I'm not muted, but I don't have anything to say, which is surprising.
Hopefully, when you're talking, people aren't just looking at you. Well, it could be a nice thing too.
I agree, though.
All right. So this kind of thing could be really tricky because there's several different colors that are going on in this shawl. So basically, there's a red and then there's a blue. So I would block in some colors and maybe add detail later, kind of fake it a little bit. You add it in kind of right now, making some choppy brush strokes, and that kind of adds to the effect that there's like a pattern.
Kind of an impressionist thing. The viewer sees what they want to see for the shape.
Kind of. Yeah, so it's not like I'm trying to exactly duplicate exactly what I'm looking at. It's just like I know there's
you get
stuff.
the suggestion of a pattern there.
Yeah, exactly.
Paul, I noticed when you gave us your color palette that you didn't include cerulean blue. And yet it looks like there's cerulean blue in this shawl.
It has a similar flavor. I just got a notification my TV is going to turn itself off in a second. Okay. Yeah, it's I mix my blues, so maybe I get something that's maybe cerulean blue. I use ultramarine, and probably adding a little viridian makes it kind of tend toward that more like a cerulean. I have a tube of cerulean somewhere. But yeah, I mean, I've got Prussian blue and I've got cobalt blue, and basically, usually ultramarine is the one I go to the most. I noticed there's 42 people in this meeting. That's pretty good.
We were up to 45, I think, at tops.
Huh. Now, I have a darker blue, and I'm actually painting over this shadow area, and there's still, the shadow area contains some wet paint, so, I'm going to blend it into this shadow. All right, so let's see. I see that, I don't know, kind of a purple blue here, maybe extra color. But like I said, it's just a matter of kind of indicating some of what's going on without getting too caught up that'd be a real headache trying to like draw all the whole pattern and everything, especially just doing a quick sketch. You know, we don't need to do that. This hair, if you want to do it the way it actually is, it's kind of on her shoulder, flowing this way, so we can capture some of that. Some of this color of the fabric shows through her hair, right? And also the color of her hair, there was reflections. It's not just a dark shape, but her hair has some shapes going on that we can just barely see in the reflections. So the way I paint, often will leave these dark accents, which, you know, sometimes look okay and sometimes not so much. So so sometimes you might want to paint these colors, you know, up to one color up against another without, so you don't have these outline kind of effect. Sometimes it works and sometimes maybe you don't want that. Let's see here. There's a nice shape of the fabric down there that I'm missing, so I'll try to add that. Come right along. We only got about a half an hour left. We're making progress. I want to put in this accent color. So I see a little, I'm using a little blue, I'm adding a little yellow ochre to that blue, I think, to brighten it up a little bit. The shape of this chair she's sitting on. Now, other side, it's very similar, but it's much more in shadow. So there's some folds in this fabric that kind of come down here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I'm almost, well, I have plenty to do here, but I'll take a second and I can indicate some flowers with these, just painting some, this background shape kind of in between stems and leaves. And this is a case where I have to decide. I'll try putting in some flower-ish shapes, and hopefully it doesn't just start looking distracting, because I'm not a big flower person. I mean, as far as painting a lot of flowers, but you know, just paint a shape, just a color, hopefully people get an idea that's what's going on. I think I'm missing a stem behind this one. I don't want to get too detailed. But I think it's starting to look a little bit more like what flowers are supposed to look like. Maybe I put in a couple brighter colored leaves in here. All right, I think that's good enough for now. One thing I haven't done is this color here on her leg. So I'm mixing up more of that dioxazine purple and white. Maybe I don't want to go too bright with it, like I said before. So I can add something like a sap green or a raw umber to tone it down so it's not, like I said, too cartoony. I didn't mix up a whole lot of it. I'll use medium to kind of spread it around a little bit. And so this flat brush, and it's it's flat, so it's wide and thinner depending on how you hold it. So I can get some nice shapes of these folds by just kind of spinning the brush around a little bit. Mm-hmm. If I don't know what to say, I might start humming, so I'll apologize ahead of time. Okay, so it's a little lighter on this, here, leg, over the shadow side. This leg's a little higher, so it's brighter. You get this little dip going down. All right. I could go in here and bring out some more of the action going in here. I'm running out of paint, so I can need more. Sometimes I think I tend to loosen up as I go along, because once I get things where they are supposed to go, then I get a little freer with my brush strokes, possibly. Pick up speed. I feel like it might be nice to add a little more color to her lips. Everyone still awake?
Yeah, we're still here.
I haven't heard any snoring yet, so.
We haven't heard any of your famous sighs either, so it must be going well.
So yeah, on Zoom, no one knows if you're asleep.
The only way you can tell is to see the video of people when they're sacked out on their couch. They're
Yeah.
usually muted, so you can't hear them snore.
Are you able to do more in the background?
Am I able to? Well, I certainly can. And
Time-wise.
I had thought about that. And what I thought about doing anyway was what I mentioned before is maybe doing a variation here. So just to clean a little bit of my palette off and get some fresh paint. And I'm going to take some of this ultramarine, and I put a little viridian in it because I think I was tending towards that direction. Gray it down with just a teeny bit of raw umber. Sometimes I do this too, just put something on like that to see how I like it. I'm gonna wash my brush. So I think it might look nice to, if I'm gonna paint edge to edge, then I will start, darker out here. I'm using a relatively soft brush now. It's just kind of a blending, blendy brush, I guess. So now you get more of an effect like what goes on here, because it really is a little lighter by your shoulder and gets darker up there, and it just makes for a better effect on the painting. Gives her a bit of a glow. I don't know if she looks like sort of like an Italian peasant, or she looks like a biblical figure.
Looks like she's supposed to be an angel.
Angel, yes. Very angelic.
The hair's perfect from here.
What is?
The hair, it's wispy. It looks perfect.
Oh, good.
Did you add highlights on the
Good to know.
over her right shoulder?
Which this shoulder?
Yeah, on her hair.
I did a little bit.
I was looking for those. I didn't see you do it.
Oh, well, I was putting in the color of this fabric showing through here.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned that, well, it could be fabric showing through, but then as I go up, it's also kind of relates to the color reflections on her hair. So yeah, because it's not just one dark shape. There's stuff going on in here.
Yeah.
And the photo here I'm working from, it actually does look more colorful. I had grayed down this purple in the highlight, but I might pull out a few highlights. I mean, I like a limited palette, but then I like color too, so I tend to, I don't know. Sometimes I go very limited palette, but then other times it's fun to go with the bright colors. So this is a little bit brighter purple. I can kind of go in and with the sun or the light sitting at the most.
I just did a class with Susan Overstreet, and your approach, at least in this painting, is so different from hers in terms of color.
Oh yeah, I think we probably work very differently.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is so harmonious and soft.
Oh, she likes to go bright everywhere. So once again, I can see like what's generally happening. I'm not going to worry too much about patterns, but I can see there's spots of this brighter, like a teal color mixed in with these blues, and there's a little bit on the edge here. There's a nice kind of a, I don't know, this white border here on her cuff. Kind of a messy line. That helps define that shape, which I didn't have before, so that's better now. This color here, well, it's actually it's a much more pleasant color in reality than I have it. So I'm going to try to, not sure how much of it you can see on your screen, but so I had a shadowy kind of greenish color, but I think I can add more flesh tone that's more in keeping. It actually is bringing in this color kind of into that flesh tone.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's nice if things work together. So like it reads as the shadow part of the arm, but I'm mixing in these same purples, which cools down the flesh and makes it work in nice harmony with that other color. So yes, the hands are complicated, and they're very simplified in my drawing, but good enough for now for what we're doing here. So, we have 20 minutes left. To recap some of what we talked about starting off, on the dark background, then doing a darker drawing on top of that, and then wiping away the highlights. Start with big shapes and slowly work back down to more detail. How do you do it, Marie?
Somewhat like you, but I tend to I do more. I think I generally do more drawing. I mean, as I'm sitting here, I'm sketching her. Just draw and draw and draw. But I more or less the same in terms of the approach. I mean, the result isn't the same, but the thing that I struggle with now is I work off of two monitors, my iPad and a large screen that I have, and they give me two very different colors.
Right.
One will be very bright and the other not, and I have to decide which I want to go with. So sometimes I go in after the fact and sort of do some color correction.
Right. Yeah, working from a monitor, it can be really great, but yeah, you have to watch out what kind of colors you're getting. And I usually think my MacBook Pro has good colors, and then if I have my MacBook Pro next to my TV screen. I realize how different it is. So I recently got this large Samsung, and the colors seem to be pretty good. I have tried other brands that did not seem to, the colors just didn't seem right. I heard that Sony is good at reproducing the colors.
When all else fails, I remind myself that the value's doing the work.
Right. Well, half the time I'm making it up. I mean, sometimes, like I'm doing a landscape, you might just see this kind of plain blue sky that looks okay, but you realize like, well, if I throw some purple in there or some green or, you can make it more interesting. Brush strokes. So like right now, I can make your eyes just slightly smaller. I'm bringing the colors up to where the shadow areas are. Let's see here. I'm not quite sure if both eyes are working with each other, so I'm going to change this a little. Maybe it seemed a little too open before.
One thing I'll say about our class doing Zoom rather than working from a photo, you do get to know the facial structure and the movements and so forth of the models, so it's not like working from a photo.
What's that when you're working directly from the model?
Well, no, when we're working Wednesday nights on Zoom.
Oh, and Zoom, yeah.
It is better than working from a photo because the person's moving and you get a personality, you get their facial structure, you get their hand movements, and you can use that rather than just a static photo.
Yeah, I know when we have a model once say like, why don't you could just pick me from a photo? Like, why do it on Zoom? Like, well, yeah, you get to know the person, their personality. It's all part of the experience.
Like I know Marisa and I've painted and drawn her many times, who you are, the photo of the person. So doing my sketch, I can look at it and say, I know that's what she looks like, or that's not what she looks like, and I can adjust accordingly. So it's helpful.
Yeah. Have you talked to her? I tried writing to her, but she hasn't written back.
Yeah, on Instagram, back and forth, we do a little bit. So she's doing okay, like everybody else during this.
Well, maybe I should try a different method of contacting her. Wasn't sure she was interested in modeling anymore, or I thought she had a new boyfriend and moved away, but then maybe moved back.
Yeah, she's back.
I just mixed up some dark colors. I feel like I could use some accents in here. Somewhere. Just make it up. How many people have we lost? 39, still pretty good.
You have holding power.
Mm-hmm. We should have a Q&A or something if people have questions. Or, I mean, either at the end or right now as I'm working.
I'm still processing everything that happens and just internalizing it. Sometimes it's best not to ask what you're really not sure you want to.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just concentrating, paying attention.
That's it.
Everyone can unmute themselves the way it's set up. So if you have any questions, please jump in while there's time.
Yeah.
I like what you said about that when you get into it. I don't know how we want to define that, but when you get into it, you loosen up, you speed up, and it's like there's a rhythm, like a swimmer or a bicycle rider or any athlete. But the artist, I've found it when I'm painting and I'm on, I start off slowly, and when things are working well, all of
Yeah.
a sudden the brush is moving, my mind is working less, and they're working together, the hand, the body, and the mind. Does that sound foolish?
No, and I often will say that you think in terms of if you're playing a musical instrument, which I used to a bit,
I
but
do too.
or anyone can probably relate to the fact that some people labor when they're playing a musical instrument. Other people, like a jazz musician, just plays and it just comes out, you know. And that's
I did a team teaching humanities course with a guy who was nuts and bolts. He was very processed. Step two, step followed step one, three followed step two. And he played the saxophone, and so did I. We didn't know that. Our students had worked that out of us. And one of the real bright kids in the class, a Harvard type guy, eventually, he said, you know, Mr. Helfand, if somebody gave the music to Mr. Crosby, he'd play it just as it's written, but you'd be bored in 30 seconds doing your own thing. And he was absolutely right. That improvisational aspect kind of takes over and combines. And I think that's kind of what you were saying a little bit.
Yeah, well, there's that, and then there's when things just start happening, and you have to, it's part of it just realizing when you make a stroke if it works or not. Like you might make a stroke by accident, but if it works, then leave it. You have to realize.
Yeah.
It's also about thinking about it. That if you get to the point where you can paint, and you're just in the groove, and you're not really concentrating. I mean, you're not concentrating on how to do it. It just comes naturally, like a musician just playing notes because they just come, and he just knows what he wants to paint. I mean, what he wants to play, and it just happens. But if you're, if you can get to that point, then that's a nice thing, you know. And sometimes I feel like I'm in that zone. I'm not thinking too much about it. It's just happening, and you're just riffing, you know.
I think that's the word, in the zone. Yeah, you do riff. You do. The arts intermingle with that. I know that I worked with theater for 25 years as a director more than as an actor, and I would go home from rehearsal, and my mind would think about how I could have done something better. And the next day I'd go and change it back a little bit. And I think it was the same way with painting. And I would always take the first thing that I didn't like, the thing that stuck out when I looked at a face or a scene, if it's a landscape, and say, that's what I want to change. And it would change the whole thing. But you'd literally have to step back from what you were painting and say, okay, don't try to take in the whole thing. Take in that one particular thing that's bothering you, or that's got a quirkiness to it that you don't like, and then go from there. And each day it might change a little, and then until finally, boom, it either happens or it doesn't.
Yeah.
Paul, I'm just wondering, this looks so fabulous and done right now. How do you know when to stop?
Well, there's an old phrase that people would say, it takes two people to know when painting is finished. The person who's painting it and another person to tell them to stop it.
Yeah. I have my wife, I call my muse, and she'll come down to the studio and she'll say, put the brush down, Michael.
Yeah, you can ruin something. And
the thing is, she's a doll maker and her work is widely accepted and she sells quite a bit, but she has an eye. She really knows what she's looking at. Yeah. And she can often see what's better in my paintings than I can. That I've tried to learn from it. That's why she's the muse. But I think you're absolutely right. It takes two to make this happen at times. Yeah. That part of it.
Well, sometimes, like with your landscape painting, the sun changes and you just have to stop. With a model, maybe the model session comes to an end and you have to stop. So it kind of depends on how detailed you want to get. If it's a real detail painting, then you have to work until you got all those details finished. And if it's more impressionistic, basically you work until you feel like you don't want to change anything.
Yeah, I had one painting like that was strange with this, the pandemic. There was a lady who used to live up on Cape. Now she lives in Florida. She saw one of my paintings that had been sold, but she asked if I could not duplicate it exactly because she knew that isn't how it happens. But she said, could you try one and to try to get that painting done? And it was of a marsh scene in Sandwich. And we communicated on the form and through the visual like this. And she, once or twice a week, she'd get in and she would tell me things that she would like to see more of from the first one. Our monitors were slightly different, so that was causing some confusion. But it took 2 months of that conversation and doing things like this, you know, with a Zoom type of effect, until she absolutely, and she didn't love it at the beginning, but by the time we were done, she did. And I found I learned a lot from her, and she'd done some painting, but she, you know, I learned by listening to her and following some of the lines of what she would like to see, from color to composition. That can be an interesting experiment.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to listen to, you know, other people's opinions, although everyone's going to have a different opinion. And,
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be someone who's not agreeing with what you're doing. But it's interesting to find out what people have to say. I like doing gallery work, because then you do a painting, if someone comes in, they like it, they buy it, you're done. But if you're doing a commission portrait, a commission landscape, or whatever, people have something in mind, and if, you know, is it going to live up to their expectations? You know, it's hard to know. There's always that pressure.
Yep.
So then I feel more like, when doing commissions, I feel more like I'm back doing illustration, you know, doing something, I'm trying to fulfill an order that somebody wants me to fill, you know?
Yes.
So.
Well, I just want to say a couple of words. First of all, a lot of words of thanks. That was really fabulous, Paul. You are quite the master. And also, just with all the help that you provided in order to get the whole video situation to work for us, as it has so well. And I'd like to also thank Sis for the fine job that she did with the introduction. So this is quite an accomplishment for Yarmouth Art Guild today, and I really appreciate all the effort that's gone into doing this. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, thank
Nice
you.
Nice job, Paul.
Oh, I guess we're, yeah.
I don't know how to break this kind of thing up. I mean, I get the impression there are people who will stay with you all afternoon. That's not fair.
I have one more question for Paul.
I just wish I'd seen this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Paul, during COVID, are you doing your workshops in person in the studio, or are you doing Zoom workshops like this that people can?
Oh, yeah. So you can contact me, and you can look at our group Facebook page as Figure Painting at Schulenburg Studio. We have a group, and you can see what people are doing. I have people, I can take lots more people on Zoom once a week. This week, it's going to be this coming Sunday from 2 to 5, and I have a good model coming. And I usually have 5 different cameras. So if you don't like one view, then you pick a different view. Some of them might be like a portrait up close. Some of them more full figure. Usually there's 30 people or so. We've had 40 or 50. I can have up to 100, but so far, you know, I think 50 is about the tops. So anyone who wants to come, just write to me and I'll send you how to join in. And it's been a $15 fee. And it's just a Zoom link you get, and then you can join and paint along. And sometimes people will take a screenshot to work from later on, or occasionally I'll take some photos and send them to people too if they want to work from a photo after we're done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for your nice work and your great information for all of us. Thank you, Paul.
Should I turn this?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all for coming.
That's great.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I'll send a photo to somebody, to Jan, I guess, and then she can.
That'd be good.
That'd be great. I'll share it with the rest of the ag.
You can see what it looks like. All right.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Stay warm.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a treat. That's Jan.
Hi, Jan. Oh, yep. Well, thanks. Yeah, it was pretty easy. I get to paint for a few hours. Hang out with people.
Somebody's getting a phone call.
You going? Oh, Patty's got a phone call. I might paint on this for a few more minutes.
All right. I'm going to look forward to joining one of your sessions. I'm not sure I can do Sunday, but maybe.
Well, I guess what I didn't, maybe, I don't know. People can contact me. I have an email list. So anyone who wants to just get notifications about it, just send me the email and I'll put them on the list and then they can just join whenever it's convenient for them.
Okay, I'll add that information to our YAG newsletter.
Oh, good idea.
And
Excellent.
thank you for encouraging your population of people to join us. It's been fun.
Yeah.
We actually have one new member as a result.
Oh yeah, who is that?
Leah.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
have her last name in front of me, but she's up in P-Town and Wellfleet, I think.
Oh, cool. All right. So yeah, it all worked out.
It did. All right.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, and I'll send you a photo of this. You know how it looks, so people can see
Okay, it's gorgeous.
better. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye bye.